In this video, we'll be digging in and taking a look at the latest D&D 5th edition book release, Mythic Odysseys of Theros. Hi everybody, my name is Nate, and you are watching WASD20, a channel about tabletop RPGs and fantasy maps. Now firstly, I gotta admit, I wasn't too keen on the idea of doing a video on Mythic Odysseys of Theros. I usually do skip a lot of the Magic the Gathering tie-in books, and a Greek mythology inspired setting, while I love Greek mythology, was just not all that interesting to me. In addition to that, there's been a lot going on in my personal life. You know, there's COVID, that's all of our personal lives, but also my kids going back to school and me as a teacher going back to school. And yes, in case you're wondering, we are back face to face. We have now had a week and a half of classes and lots of protocols in place to try to keep us safe. And so far, so good. Fingers crossed. It's all been a bit crazy and overwhelming, but it really is good to be back. And then in terms of D&D books, honestly, I'm much more interested in some of the upcoming releases like Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frost Maiden. I've got a bit of a nostalgia soft spot for Icewind Dale, and it's an adventure book that looks like it's going to be pretty cool. They also just announced a few days ago Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, and it looks so cool. I'm so excited we were going to get another book that has lots of character options. So honestly, this one was a bit low on my list of priorities, and I didn't have all that high hopes, but I gotta say, it won me over. So I'm excited to give you guys a look and tell you some of the things I really like about this book. So let's do it. Clash with the Gods of Theros in this campaign sourcebook for the world's greatest role-playing game. I really like the cover here. It's a very dynamic scene of this Hydra sort of creature with a hero and this statue being basically chopped in half. Really cool. And the special edition cover looks awesome too. I don't have that one. Kind of wish I did because, those pretty colors. It's gorgeous. Now, just to be totally upfront, I have not finished reading this whole book, and that's why I'm not calling it a review. It's just kind of a quick take after spending several hours with the book over the last couple weeks and skimming all of it, reading large sections of it. So, the intro here does talk about what Theros is. One of the more fascinating ideas to me is this notion that the gods are basically dreamed up by mortals. Anything that it receives enough belief by mortals becomes reality in Theros. And so yes, that counts for, pretty unsavory creatures too, but especially the gods. This talks a lot about this idea of fate and destiny, and heroes are huge. Most of the heroes here in Theros will be champions of the gods. I think it will be rare that a character will not be associated or, affiliated or the champion of a god. So you have these different kind of archetypes here, history and myth and reality. Several different languages here. And I gotta say, I love the art in this section and really throughout the book, but this is especially cool, these kind of motifs here across the top. The layout I really like too, just the kind of design of each of the pages is really nice as well. So the next chapter is all about character creation. This is one of the chapters a lot of people are most interested in because everyone wants more character options, right? So it does talk a little about heroic drive here and kind of how you can take your background and amplify it a bit and make it fit with Theros a bit more. Like your flaw, for example, becoming a more tragic flaw that's really, it could be a very crippling thing if your enemies or a rival deity found out about this thing. It could be your downfall if they found out about that flaw. So kind of amping things up a bit, and that's definitely true of the heroism. You are not just some random adventurer here in Theros. You are much more heroic. You are the champion of a god. You have been chosen. You are supernatural in some ways. And so this gets into, in addition to the backgrounds and all the other abilities you get from your race and class, you also get, on top of that, a supernatural gift. And some of these things are really powerful, like this one right here, having advantage on death saving throws and hard to kill. When you're reduced to 0 hit points but not killed outright, you can drop to 1 hit point instead. So that's pretty powerful. Or things like the Nyxborn here, Cloak of Stars. As an action, you wrap yourself in a starry cloak, appearing like a silhouette formed from the night sky. When you do, attack rolls have a disadvantage against you. This cloak lasts for 1 minute until you doff it, or until you die. So anyway, for 1 minute, all attacks against you have disadvantage, which is pretty powerful. All right, now we can get into the races. In Theros, you have humans, centaurs, which were released in a previous book, and minotaurs were also released in a previous book, and I think that was, those two were from Ravnica. And then you have Leonin, which are proud lion-like hunters. I can show a picture of those here. Pretty cool character class. Kind of like the Tabaxi, but a little more on the strong and forceful side, rather than the lithe and stealthy and springy side. Minotaurs, it seems like there is a bit of a different twist from what they are in Ravnica. And then you have satyrs, which are these sort of, I describe them like fawns, really. You know, Mr. Tumnus type creatures. But they are fey creatures, and we have not seen them as a player character race before, so that's new here. And one of the big things is they have magic resistance. You have advantage on saving throws against spells and other magical effects. So yeah, that's a pretty powerful ability. I can see a lot of people being really attracted to that. We also have Tritons here, which were released somewhere. Maybe that was Volo's guide? I can't remember. There are no new classes here, but there are some subclass options. You've got Bard, College of Eloquence, and we've got Paladin, Oath of Glory. Bard, College of Eloquence, I see a lot of people saying this is pretty powerful, pretty good. It seems like a really cool option for Bard. And Oath of Glory looks cool on the surface, but I've heard a lot of people being kind of underwhelmed by it. And yeah, I can kind of see that. In some ways, it seems to be mixing in a little bit of like fighter type stuff, like just making you more of a physical force. And now background, and this seems like kind of a weird inclusion. There's one background. Like, it seems like if you're gonna put some backgrounds in, just make a couple. They're not that hard to make. So anyway, interesting choice there, but I suppose we do get all these supernatural gifts and a bunch of other things that are kind of like backgrounds. And I think one of the big things is your background in Theros will be very much tied to a god if you are serving a god. Absolutely gorgeous art here. I love the starry sky on the shadows of all the gods and a lot of the kind of heavenly beings and creatures. Really, really cool. So the section on gods here, there's a lot of kind of lead up information. There's this list of gods. I think there are 15 total is what I counted. Myths and deeds, worship, clerics and champions, and piety. Now this is a big one. This is kind of a new mechanic or resource for the game. And basically, if you are earning favor with your god by doing things that they like, for example, for Athreos here. So they actually give very specific examples here of ways that you can earn your god's favor, specific acts, and lose your god's favor. So if you can earn enough piety, you can get some pretty big bonuses. And the last one, if you have 50 plus piety, is that you can increase your intelligence or wisdom score by 2, and also increase your maximum for that score by 2. So each of them do give you a choice between 2 ability scores, and they all increase your maximum once you get there. But that's going to be pretty hard to do, because in general, the rule of thumb is that you earn 1 piety point per adventure, sort of per session. It's going to be the general rule of thumb, but there might be cases where you do something amazing that earns more, or you do something well, but you also do something to piss off your god, and then you're going to be losing that. So this whole relationship with the gods here is so central to Theros, and I just find it interesting how that is going to really change the game, because what motivates players will no longer just be killing monsters to get XP or finding lots of treasure, but also pleasing your god. So yeah, I think that's a pretty big game changer, and I think it's pretty cool. It really is not just another book that's kind of giving you a different flavor. In a lot of ways, it's making some pretty big changes to the game. So anyway, I love all the art here. It is so good. So very, very good. And I could also see you in your core D&D game. If you want to play a cleric, if I want to play a cleric, I might be tempted to go to this book and pick one of these gods. After all, the PHB gods are already often gods that are drawn from lots of mythologies, so why not this one too? Why not throw some of these into any of your D&D settings? I think that's a great thing to do. Or you could kind of slot in some existing gods in the Forgotten Realms or other settings, and you could kind of see which ones of these might fit the description a little bit or fit the domains of some of these gods, and you could use some of this stuff for those gods as well. So anyway, this is one of the more exciting chapters of the book for me that I could definitely see making use of. And that is also true of chapter 4, because chapter 4 has a section for each deity as well, but now you're looking at adventure ideas for that deity. Okay, so anyway, I skipped chapter 3 a little bit though. Let's get to that first. Chapter 3 is Realms of Gods and Mortals. This is kind of just a setting overview. The map here, I think they could have done better. It looks a little bit blah to me, a little bit boring, but I guess it's nice that they actually have a map, and I think this is the first time the world of Theros has been mapped from what I heard. So you get a little section on each of these regions here. This is useful stuff if you are going to run a game in Theros, but for me, I probably won't. So yeah, I could read it for some inspiration and ideas, most certainly, but I probably won't. So at the end here, you do get a section on the realms of the gods. It's not just kind of the settings of Theros, but also the realms of the gods. And that includes Nyx and the underworld as well. So pretty cool. All right, creating Theros adventures. This is another one. I'm really glad they included this because this is the sort of thing, once again, that I could see using as inspiration. When I'm struggling for ideas, I often do go to a module or something like that. And those give me great inspiration for some of my adventures. But I really appreciate that in a lot of the setting books for 5th edition, they've been doing a better job of giving you adventure ideas. And they even give you a full level 1 adventure, which is really cool because for me, that's just one less barrier to me running this setting, right? It just serves as a nice little introduction to the setting that you can just slot right in, see if you like the feel of it, and if you do, use some of these other ideas for campaign inspiration. And yeah, as you can see here, they do have some Dyson Logos location maps as well, which is really handy. So for each god here, they do have champions, a little word about the champions, a little word about quests for that deity, a little word about villains and some actual villains here, and then monsters, and then what it would look like to have Athreos as a campaign villain, divine schemes, and then you get a location, an actual location. So in this case, the underworld crossing and a map for that location. So really cool. I think it's a great inclusion to have all of this. So you get one for each of the deities. And then at the end here, they also do include a little section on nautical adventures, which is pretty good. You know, it gives you some nice adventure ideas. Nothing really like practical rules for running nautical adventures, nothing like what Saltmarsh gives or some other more robust supplements, but then you do have underworld adventures as well and what those might look like. And then we get that level 1 adventure that I mentioned, which looks cool. I haven't read it all, but from what I can tell, it serves as a nice intro. There's some maps and a dungeon and things like that. All right, the section on treasures here does have, just a few magic items, nothing earth-shattering here. Well, maybe there's some literal earth-shattering things, but you know what I mean. This right here, now this is the stuff of nightmares. But anyway, let's just get on past that and go to chapter 6. Friends and foes. So here we get a whole bunch of monsters. Now there's some classic monsters, some things that you would expect to find in Theros that are already in other books like the Monster Manual, Volo's Guide, Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, and things like that. So that's, I think, a really good inclusion. I kind of wish they had done some of that with classes, for example. So here is how these monsters fit into Theros, but what about how the various classes, unless I missed something, I didn't see anything about how a rogue might fit into Theros, how a cleric might fit into Theros. Well, that one's pretty obvious probably, but that would be something I would actually appreciate seeing, is how more of the core stuff now would be ported into this setting and how it might look a little bit different in this setting. And then we get the bestiary here. So a whole bunch of monsters. I have not counted them all, but there are some pretty cool ones. And I think that is a reason that some DMs are going to want to get this book, although I happen to think the adventure ideas will be much more useful for me, as I've already got several books full of monsters. This one right here I thought was a little crazy looking. Pretty cool. That's the 100-handed one. But yeah, there's some really creepy looking stuff and a lot of stuff that you would kind of expect to see here in a Greek mythology inspired setting as well. Again, the beautiful art here throughout. Definitely have seen a couple of pieces, I think, of recycled art from other books, but most of this is actually from the Magic the Gathering art, and I think that is why it's such high quality. I mean, they just have great art in Magic. All right, the last section here, these are mythic monsters, and so these are monsters that are extremely powerful. There's the horrifying Arasta once again. Yikes. And yeah, there's a whole lot of information on these, and these are just, yeah, massive boss monsters. We're talking about CR21 on this thing. So these are like campaign end sort of bosses. CR17 on Hithonia, and Tromokratis, CR26. Whew, man. So these are something new, and I think they're pretty cool. There's only 3 of them, but I don't really see people using a whole lot of these. Again, they're kind of those huge mammoth campaign ending encounters. So that is the book. Overall, I really like what I'm seeing here. Again, I don't plan to run anything in Theros, but I'm glad I have this book. Now, would I have bought this just for myself if it weren't for making a review? I'm kind of on the fence about that, actually. The section on gods does seem like the most exciting thing to me, and the adventure ideas for the various locations, as well as maps and things. That would be the big thing that would draw me to want to buy this book. But yeah, I'm not viewing this as a must-buy. And honestly, for some reason, when I see that it's a Magic the Gathering setting, personally, it makes me a little less attracted to it, and maybe that's just a dumb bias I need to let go of. But anyway, let me know what you think down in the comments below. Mythic Odyssey of Theros. All right, that's going to do it for this one, guys. Before we say goodbye, I want to thank the WASD20 patrons. These people, their generous support on a monthly basis makes it happen for me here at WASD20, helps make these videos possible. And if you enjoy these videos and you want to support, you can check it out over at patreon.com/WASD20. There's some pretty cool rewards like weekly live map drawing streams with me and occasional giveaways. There's one coming up this weekend, actually. Stuff like that. So definitely go check it out, and thank you, patrons. All right, take care, everybody. Stay safe and healthy out there. You'll see me again very soon.